Here we are in the LBJ penthouse talking Texas politics, and as the summer heat has increased, the heat in Texas politics has also gone up. With me to talk about what has happened this week, Cassie Pollock with the Texas Tribune, Brian Smith with St. Edward's University, Gromer Jeffers with Dallas Morning News, and Scott Braddock with the Quorum Report. Cassie, let's start with you. What stuck with you this week?
You know, I think it was pretty notable that House Speaker Dade Phelan issued what we know to be as the first and only civil arrest warrant so far for a Texas House Democrat who was part of the quorum break.
Brian, what's your quick take on the week?
The return of COVID and the Delta variant, and with it bringing back all the battles between state, federal, and local governments here in Texas.
Gromer, do you have a quick take?
Yeah, the special election for District 6, the congressional district here in North Texas, Jake Elzy beat Susan Wright. So that sets up future elections with Trump-endorsed candidates. How will Trump do in Texas?
Scott, what struck you about this week as your quick hit?
Well, the voting rights fight and, of course, the fact that Donald Trump lost in Texas.
One of the big issues right now is time is running out for the Democrats who broke quorum and went up to Washington, D.C. The special session is winding down. That mission seems to be accomplished, but the other mission going up to D.C. to help with the federal voting reform may not take place. So, Scott, is that a win or a loss for the Democrats? Where do they go from here?
You know, I think that the Democrats from Texas may have lit a fire in Washington. The U.S. Senate, they've rolled out yet another version of federal voting rights legislation. As you said, as far as this legislative session in Austin is concerned, it's basically over. So realistically, not much is going to happen legislatively. So it's all politics right now.
Cassie, you mentioned that one of the Democrats came back from D.C. to try to start negotiations. It didn't go anywhere. He left and then had a civil arrest warrant put out for him by the speaker. Does that create a new wall where negotiations just are a non-starter?
I think it just is signaling that this impasse, this stalemate in the Texas House is, by all appearances, going to continue. We haven't really seen a reason for, or we haven't been given a reason from, leaders or lawmakers as to what's going to be the thing or the item that ends that stalemate, which again throws questions, into the picture about, funding the legislature, right? Our over 2,100 state employees, legislative staffers, folks who work at legislative agencies, are they going to continue to be funded later this year?
Speaking of stalemates, Brian, you brought this up. Governor Abbott is in another fight with Washington, D.C., the Biden administration, and it's all over COVID and also the migrant surge down on the border. In regards to this fight, where do we go from here? It seems to be an impasse.
It is an impasse because we look at it and it is federalism in action, and we know the federal government has responsibilities over immigration. Abbott's getting involved. We know that the federal government with the mask mandate doesn't have a lot of play, and Abbott's drawing a line in the sand saying no masks. So we are definitely at an impasse on that.
Gromer, if all of this is just pre-election rhetoric, pre-election positioning, we got an indication of maybe what's coming forward because we had a special election in North Texas. The Trump-endorsed candidate lost. How should we read that?
Well, a couple of things, and you're right. Everything is setting up toward 2022. And so what we take from that is Trump just can't roll out the ball in a state like Texas and expect to win. He's going to have to do more if he wants to secure his endorsement as a victory. And voters are beginning to be more discerning. This was a race that featured two Republicans.
Cassie, Greg Abbott, and Ken Paxton got that endorsement from Trump. Should they be worried after seeing what happened in North Texas?
So I think it's personally too early to tell. We're going to have to, see what the tea leaves are looking like a little bit closer to the actual, 2022 election.
Well, I think we're kind of overreading it because I think the story we didn't talk about was it was one of those jungle primaries and the Democrats were unable to actually get a candidate into the second round.
The fact is that a Trump endorsement probably is more potent if the primary is delayed and some of these candidates like Ken Paxton get into a runoff with someone like George P. Bush or Ava Guzman, and you start to figure out what's the real distillation of the voters going into potentially a July runoff next year. We're looking at a delayed primary because redistricting is being delayed.
All right, here we go. Let's sum up this week with one word. Cassie, we'll start with you.
My word's always going to be exciting. It is a joy to cover Texas politics.
Brian.
Federalism. Every issue that we've talked about has a federalism component to it.
Scott.
Masks.
And Gromer, we'll end it with you.
Prelude to 2020.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Great insight. Appreciate it. And that wraps up another week in Texas politics.